Anime censoring has always been a little weird. You can do heroin without anyone noticing, parody the fact that censorship in anime is even a thing, or you can confuse thousands of fans like Sayonara Zetsubo-sensei by plastering the face of some random Japanese dude onto the nips of every girl in the series. This long-running joke within the fanbase is the face of Kosaku Maeda, often going by his pseudonym Maidax, and still to this day is referred back to as one of the strangest fourth wall breaks in anime history. But coincidentally, there was another anime that aired alongside it that same 2007 summer season that did the exact same thing. That anime was Bokusatsu Tenchi Dokuro-Chan. Now, there's a key difference between these two titles though, being that unlike Zetsubo's clever approach to censoring, Dokuro-Chan didn't puppeteer this JPEG around to censor anything. This disembodied head that shows up on a multitude of occasions is exclusive to the second season of the show, and even weirder is that unlike the case with Maeda, the face coming from the production team of predominantly Japanese people is white. If you look through the staff lists of My Anime List or AniList, there's no mention of a cameo appearance anywhere. In fact, people as far back as 2009 have been making threads questioning who this man is, only to be met with complete radio silence. The question has even been seen floating around as little as 3 months ago, and seeing as the Bludgeoning Angel Dokuro-Chan franchise as a whole is already fairly niche, finding any nuanced information on a series that was already this underground was basically asking for the impossible. For the last 2 years since finishing Dokuro-Chan, I flipped the internet upside down looking for the identity of this unassuming head, stretching back to nearly 7 months before I even began making YouTube videos. It's a mystery that's loomed in the heads of at least 2 other people for the last 15 years, ever since the second season aired in 2007, and with a topic this rudimentary, it was no surprise to me that cracking this puzzle wouldn't be as easy as a simple reverse image search. I'd have to dig deeper. A lot deeper. So that leaves the question: who is this man? For those unfamiliar with this franchise, Dokuro-Chan is no stranger to weird gags like this. The OVA series in of itself is a gag following the middle schooler Sakura Kusakabe, whose future self is destined to suckle on the forbidden fruit and commit the atrocity of preventing all women from physically developing past the age of 12. And as you've guessed from the title, the Bludgeoning Angel Dokuro-Chan is sent down from the heavens with her bludgeon to fix the problem, and by that I mean killing and resurrecting him repeatedly until he's too mentally ill to actually follow through with it. Now, as dumb as this premise sounds, it remains to this day as one of, if not my favorite comedy anime of all time. Like, just to give you an idea of how apathetic this show is, there's a scene in the first episode where Dokuro-Chan turns one of the students into a monkey against his will for literally no reason, and nobody in the class even bats an eye to it. This wasn't just a one-off gag either, no, he remains trapped in this purgatorial state for the rest of the series, and with so many of these reoccurring plot lines, the ending eventually culminates into one of the most chaotically beautiful displays of mental illness you'll ever see with the naked eye. Oh, and if you've been confused why Dokuro-Chan's hair has been shifting back and forth from light purple to turquoise between clips, you wouldn't be alone. There wasn't any change in studios or production staff that caused this to happen. No, for seemingly no actual reason, her hair was changed to blue for the second season, with the only plausible explanation being that this color is more accurate to her light novel counterpart. There's a lot of weird things about this second season actually, like suddenly the class is filled with a moose and giraffe, which was never even mentioned before, new cast members are introduced with very little introduction, and the personalities of some characters just feel kind of off to a point where I've honestly just started to branch this off as an alternate reality than an actual sequel. By far the weirdest addition though, that rose from the second season is a scene at 8 minutes and 7 seconds into the first episode, where as our characters casually paint the scenery, Dokuro-Chan nudges Kusakabe to look at her drawing, and says this. Why are you painting me? Now, quite frankly, this wasn't a question that I was ready for and never expected to honestly hear. Like, just to put this into perspective for you, this side profile of a completely random white male is canonically what Kusakabe sees in the mirror every morning while doing as mundane of a task as brushing his teeth. Naturally, on my first watch, I brushed this off as just another strange and funny one-off gag, but once I reached the credits of that first episode, tucked in between an array of characters and pop culture references, I noticed something. The same single angle. This wasn't very easy to work with. For all I knew, this could have just been some random dude that the production committee pulled off Google Images to use as their own little inside joke. But putting that aside, I carried on to episode 2, where at 14 minutes, we get a shot of this. No, this person was real. Very real, and the staff behind Dokuro-Chan know very well who he is. Honestly, I was equally as shocked as the face itself by this point, and if this wasn't enough, he even shows up once again where we get several new Tinder profile angles of his smolder as he frolics among the fish. I could feel myself going in circles, the dopamine had been taking full swing on my mind, and I knew my curiosity wouldn't be satiated until I could find some closure to this in my life. What was it about the carrier of this smile that the producers found so funny that they felt obligated to turn him into a reoccurring bit multiple times within the span of only 2 episodes? Now obviously, my initial presumption was that this could have been a sly Easter egg referring to the voice actor of Kusakabe himself, only for that theory to be immediately shot down after finding out that the VA was in fact not white, but also a woman. I spent the rest of that night looking into who this guy could have been, going through staff lists of My Anime List, Wikipedia, AniList, finding no mention of him anywhere aside from a single unanswered thread in 2009 simply titled, "Who's that guy?" 13 years later, a message left undelivered and still not even a single response hammered in the last nail to the coffin that I had no idea what rabbit hole I was digging myself into. And that's where the search ended. 7 months go by, it was no longer Christmas season, and at this point, I've decided what better way to celebrate summer than reopening this can of tentacles. While my lack of information had halted my first attempt at tracking the IP of this man down, I no longer sought to answer this case from a purely surface perspective. Now, unlike my first dive, I'd have to consider the very grim reality that I'd have to go through and attempt to translate the hundreds of staff listings shown at the end credits of the episode, but considering my circumstances, I was practically crying for the moon. Hunting down individual names through the ending when you don't even know what you're really looking for makes it a lot harder, especially when the back of your head is telling you that there's a very real possibility that he may not have even been credited. Working backwards for this wouldn't be a piece of cake, and because of the time period that this anime came out in, the maximum resolution was still only 480p, which made machine translation too far-fetched to even attempt. I wasn't even sure which of these characters in the credits were people and which were studios or labels. There was also the possibility that regardless of if, out of the hundreds of names here, I was able to cherry-pick the exact one and look them up, that they may not have even had any online presence whatsoever. And to be completely transparent here, being a broke college student who makes $3 per video is my only excuse for why I didn't hire a professional translator to do the dirty work for me. Browsing once again through the My Anime List staff, I noticed a name: John Cirabella. Out of the entire cast, this was the single name that didn't have any traces of Japanese origin. Looking deeper into who this individual actually was, I was able to amass a total of, one photo that proved this man had even walked this earth. While there's very little information about him on the web, he's worked as a producer for beloved underground films like Tokyo Gore Police and has served as an executive producer on a lot of anime projects. Looking closer at this picture, we need to call into question when this photo was taken, and considering that his anime licensing company Media Blasters was founded in 1997, that would give us a 10-year margin at the very most, and yeah, this isn't the guy. There were a lot of inconsistencies with Cirabella being a suspect though. First and foremost is that his face hardly matches at all, and his company Media Blasters distributes the English versions of anime, meaning that he'd have little to no involvement in the initial production of Dokuro-Chan when these photos were actually taken. If that wasn't enough though, I was also saddened to find that he'd announced the acquisition of Dokuro-Chan nearly a year after the original release of the OVA, which would make this completely impossible. So with the only plausible name now off the table, we're back to step 1, and naturally I took another 7-month break because like those elementary schoolers who thought giving everyone on the playground Indian burns was funny, Dokuro-Chan was starting to rub me the wrong way. My next lead would be interrogating the director himself to see if he had anything to say. Cause coincidentally, the director of the series, Tsutomu Mizushima, also directed several anime like Squid Girl, Shirobako, and another, all wonderful comedy anime. I attempted to reach out to him on Twitter, but unfortunately I couldn't slide into his DMs, and he never replied back to me when I sent an SOS under one of his tweets. Yeah, surprisingly, the director of some of the most prominent comedy anime in the last decade doesn't care what I have to say. I kept scavenging around the internet archives and staff blogs, which was when I unknowingly came across something that I thought was pretty big. So to give some backstory here, back in April of 2007, following the release of Bludgeoning Angel Dokuro-Chan Season 1, the production committee of Season 2 had set up a blog that would chronicle their lives until the release of the anime. This ranged anywhere from posting pictures of their lunch to taking photos of the Dokuro-Chan light novel on their flight. Now what's interesting about this plane flight is that at around the midway point of this archive, the staff started blogging about their project to spread Skull-chan, meaning Dokuro-chan, in Italy. He then elaborates saying, "I would like to spread Dokuro-chan to everyone here, which is said to be one of the places with the most tourists in the world," and attached pictures of tourists posing with the Dokuro-chan light novel. This was all part of a larger series that Miki from the editorial department was going to undergo, where he would spread Skull-chan in various places. So while I was rightfully glad to make this discovery, it also opened a new avenue that would shrivel my tentacles dry. Could it be, and hear me out on this, that while the Dokuro-chan missionaries were out sermonizing her good name in Rome, that it was as simple as having one of them ask a random guy on the street to pose for a couple pictures? It would make sense, because unlike Japan, Rome would open the floodgates to an entirely new stream of white victims. Within this staff blog also contained several other pieces of media taken from events like the recording booth for Dokuro Channel, where the glare would conveniently blur out any attempt at me tracking him down. It was also around this time that my friend Hayden started showing interest in the subject as well, and thanks to their completely legal support, I was able to come into acquisition of both the original RAWs of the manga alongside the Ninatayo Dokuro-chan Kenko Shindan Daisuken PS2 game. You might say I was grasping at straws here, and you'd be completely right in thinking that, but holding on to this ever-fleeting fate that somehow the manga or game would give me some kind of beacon of light, I can assuredly say that yes. Looking through both of these was a complete waste of time. Now at this point, I wanted to take a step back and reflect on what I truly learned along this journey. Why did I care so much? Why was I even doing this? The producers probably threw this in last minute with hardly any thought, so why was I so enthralled by a mystery that only 2 other people on the entire internet had showed any remote interest in? I was starting to feel more like a stalker than a fan at this point. Like, this poor guy that just happened to genetically conjure up such a funny face was probably just enjoying his evening stroll around Rome and happened to cross paths with the Dokuro-chan missionaries to partake in a little photo shoot. Yet here I was, rotting away in my bedroom for nearly 2 years trying to uncover an identity that never had any online notoriety to begin with. Honestly, I'm ashamed to even be writing this, but after hours upon hours of searching that only gave me more questions than answers, I hung up my hat. I realized months ago that I was just going in circles at this point and had to accept that my curiosity couldn't always be satiated, with my last remaining hope being that I could send out a PSA video like this to see if anybody knew the truth. So, I gave up. After finishing my recent video, I did what I'd normally do when I run out of things to talk about and confided in my Patreon Discord server for video ideas, which was almost immediately met by a response from my friend Smug, who was telling me to make a video on, you guessed it, Bludgeoning Angel Dokuro-Chan. Naturally, I explained to him that this is something I'd been wanting to do for literal years, but couldn't because I couldn't find the last tentacle in the ink sac. And as always, coping with my inability to do anything productive with my life, I went back to watching my regularly scheduled Double Rainbow Slots gambling streams. A few minutes went by where I had time to succumb my eyes to the truth that I'd become a crippling gambling addict in the future, but a buzz from my phone knocked my socks off in that same moment, and when I looked down at that message, I had no words to describe what I was reading. This is the guy. I had to rub my eyes to fully understand what I was reading, but after clicking that link, there was nothing left to say aside from 2 words. Thomas Romaine. Honestly, I still can't believe it that in some sick, twisted sense of fate, the one guy asking me to make a video on Dokuro-chan also happens to be the only person I knew who could recognize his face in a matter of seconds. All that time, all those tears that I'd sunk into this could have been answered if I just asked my friend to tell me his fucking name, and as it turns out, Smug had just happened to hear his name through the grapevine while watching a video on Code Lyoko, which he created, by the way. If you can't recognize Code Lyoko from the foreheads alone, then either you didn't have cable growing up or you're 12, but Thomas Romaine is actually a French animator who's worked as an art designer on shows like Carol and Tuesday, Aria, Space Dandy, and, in the weirdest way possible, Bludgeoning Angel Dokuro-Chan, Season 2. And this isn't just some ordinary guy. No, he is a YouTube channel of his own with over 450,000 subscribers, and based on the interviews in his Twitter, he seems like a pretty down-to-earth guy, getting cited as one of the few foreigners who managed to make his way into the industry. I also looked through the credits again to see if I could find his name anywhere, but for some reason he's only listed as a cameo appearance in episode 2, which explains why I had so much trouble finding anything, since I was looking through episode 1 the entire time assuming they'd be the same since he's in both fucking episodes. I actually did write him an email because his Twitter DMs were closed because I just wanted to ask him some questions, so who knows, if he gets back to me then I'll leave his response pinned in the comments below. But if by some miracle, Thomas, you managed to see this video yourself, I just wanted to say that, like, I probably wouldn't be here making videos if it wasn't for your face in Dokuro-Chan. Like, this was genuinely one of the only reasons I started YouTube, so, thank you. Bye. Thank you to my Super Mega Bazaka Ilya fans, MHub47, and Why Do You Ask? And thank you to my Super Mega Ilya fans, Al Karenchi, Bruno Bucciarti, Emma, Jijibbers, Min Min Mancha, Red Raccoon, Sheena, and the Epic Droid. Thank you guys so much. Bye.